cold winds of Antarctica whipped fiercely across the barren landscape, biting through layers of clothing like a knife. It was a desolate place where the sun's rays scarcely penetrated the thick cloud cover that seemed to loom perpetually. For most, it was just a lifeless expanse of ice and snow. But for Dr. Clara Mitchell, it was the epicenter of a mystery that had plagued her thoughts for months. Dr. Mitchell was a renowned astrobiologist, having dedicated her life to the study of extreme environments and the potential for life beyond Earth. When NASA contacted her for a special assignment at their research station near the South Pole, she thought it was a dream come true. Yet, as she arrived at the station, a feeling of unease settled over her. The secrecy surrounding this mission was palpable. The research station, known as McMurdo, was a hub of scientific activity, but Clara sensed the tension among the personnel. Scientists and engineers moved through the station with furtive glances, whispering in corners and avoiding her questions. It was only a few days into her stay that she overheard snippets of conversations that hinted at something unusual buried beneath the ice. "Did you hear about the readings from the seismic survey?" a voice said, trembling slightly. "Yeah, but we're not supposed to discuss it," another replied, glancing around nervously. Driven by curiosity, Clara dove into her work, but the whispers haunted her thoughts. What were they hiding? She recalled the rumors she'd heard in the scientific community, a suggestion that NASA was exploring a hidden anomaly beneath the ice, one that could change everything humanity knew about life and the universe. One evening, after a long day of research, Clara decided to explore the station's lower levels. The dimly lit corridors were lined with posters of distant galaxies and astronauts, yet the air felt heavy with secrets. As she descended the stairs leading to the basement, the sounds of machinery and distant conversations faded, leaving only the echo of her footsteps. The basement was an expansive area filled with storage crates and old equipment. The further she ventured inside, the more she felt the weight of isolation pressing down on her. A flickering fluorescent light overhead barely illuminated the area, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. Suddenly, Clara's attention was drawn to a small, locked door at the far end of the room. It was unmarked and seemed out of place among the clutter of scientific equipment. Her heart raced as she approached it, and she could feel the cold metal beneath her fingertips. The lock was old, rusted, and looked as though it hadn't been opened in years. With a deep breath, Clara glanced over her shoulder to ensure no one was watching. Her curiosity piqued. She rummaged through her pockets for a makeshift tool. After a few moments of fiddling, she managed to pry the door open just enough to slip inside. The room was dark and cramped, filled with the scent of stale air and dust. Clara switched on her flashlight and gasped at the sight before her. Inside, she found stacks of boxes marked with government insignias, some dating back decades. But what caught her attention was a large, covered object in the center of the room. Drawing closer, Clara could see that the object was covered with a thick tarp, its shape unnaturally angular, almost mechanical. She hesitated for a moment, contemplating what might lie beneath. The urge to uncover the truth was overwhelming. With shaking hands, she reached down to pull back the tarp. As the fabric fell away, Clara's breath hitched in her throat. The object was unlike anything she had ever seen. A massive, intricately designed structure that appeared to be made of an otherworldly metal, pulsating faintly as if alive. Strange symbols adorned its surface, twisting and curling in ways that defied comprehension. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the darkness behind her, sending chills down her spine. "You shouldn't be here." Clara whirled around, her flashlight beam revealing a tall figure shrouded in shadow. It was Dr. Samuel Harris, the lead scientist at the station, his face pale and drawn. "Dr. Harris, what is this?" Clara stammered, her heart pounding. Harris stepped closer, his expression a mixture of fear and resignation. "You've stumbled upon something we were ordered to keep hidden. It's not what you think it is." "What do you mean?" she pressed, sensing the gravity of the situation. He hesitated, glancing back at the door. "It's an artifact. We discovered it during a drilling expedition years ago. At first, we thought it was just a meteorite, but it's something much worse." The room grew colder as Clara listened intently, feeling a sense of dread creeping over her. "Worse? How?" "Strange things have been happening since we brought it here. Equipment malfunctions, personnel going missing. And then there are the dreams." His voice dropped to a whisper. "People have seen things that shouldn't exist." Clara's mind raced, her scientific curiosity battling against a primal fear. "What have you seen?" "I can't explain it. It's like it's calling to us, trying to communicate," he replied, his eyes wide with a mix of terror and fascination. "We're afraid of what it might do if we don't contain it." The air in the room thickened with tension as Clara's heart raced. She had to know more. "We need to study it, understand what it is." "No!" Harris's voice rose sharply, echoing in the confined space. "You don't understand. Some knowledge is better left buried." Before Clara could respond, the lights in the room flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only by their quickening breaths. Suddenly, the sound of metal scraping against metal broke through the stillness. Clara's heart raced as she swung her flashlight towards the source, illuminating the object. To her horror, she saw the surface of the artifact shifting, the symbols glowing ominously. "What's happening?" she shouted, panic flooding her voice. Harris grabbed her arm, his grip tight and urgent. "We have to get out of here." But before they could move, the ground beneath them shook violently, sending both of them sprawling to the floor. Clara's flashlight flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows as they struggled to regain their footing. In that moment of chaos, the artifact seemed to awaken. A low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through their bodies. Clara felt a wave of energy washing over her, pulling her towards the structure, as if it were alive and beckoning her closer. "Clara, don't!" Harris yelled, but his voice felt distant, as if she were hearing it underwater. Something inside Clara stirred, a whisper in the back of her mind, urging her to reach out. Against her better judgment, she extended her hand toward the artifact, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold metal. A surge of images flooded her mind, flashes of alien landscapes, otherworldly beings, and a vast darkness that threatened to consume everything. She gasped, stumbling back, overwhelmed by the visions. Then, just as quickly as it began, everything stopped. The artifact fell silent, the glowing symbols dimming as the shaking subsided. Clara and Harris exchanged terrified glances, the weight of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. "We need to tell the others," Clara said, her voice shaking. Harris shook his head vigorously. "No! If we alert them to this, they'll want to move it. We have to keep it hidden." "But it could be groundbreaking," Clara argued. "We can't just leave it here." "The cost of that knowledge is too high," Harris insisted. "I've seen what it can do." As they stood there, the reality of their situation settled in. The artifact held answers, but it also held danger. Clara knew they were treading on treacherous ground. The secrets of the South Pole were not just hidden beneath the ice. They were entwined in the very fabric of humanity's existence. What had started as a quest for knowledge had now spiraled into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. Little did Clara know this was only the beginning. The days that followed were fraught with tension. Clara and Harris managed to maintain a facade of normalcy at the research station, but a silent pact had formed between them. They would investigate the artifact further, all the while ensuring that no one else caught wind of its existence. Clara's days were filled with data analysis and her usual research, but her nights became consumed with thoughts of the artifact. It haunted her dreams, filling them with strange visions and a sense of urgency she couldn't shake. She found herself waking in the early hours, drenched in sweat, heart racing as she struggled to piece together the fragments of her dreams. One night, as the wind howled outside, Clara sat at her desk, reviewing her notes on extremophiles, organisms that thrived in the most hostile environments on Earth. But her mind kept drifting back to the artifact. What if it held the key to understanding life beyond our planet? What if it was a message, or worse, a warning? As the clock ticked past midnight, Clara decided to confront her fears. She slipped on her coat and made her way to the basement. The dim corridor leading to the locked room felt longer than before, the shadows stretching unnaturally. With each step, a sense of dread clawed at her, but the urge to uncover the truth pushed her forward. When she reached the door, she paused, taking a deep breath before pushing it open. The room was dark, but she switched on her flashlight, illuminating the massive artifact that loomed in the center. Its presence felt more imposing than before, as if it had grown larger in the absence of light. Clara approached it slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. The symbols still glowed faintly, pulsating in rhythm with the beating of her heart. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the surface. This time she was determined to decipher its meaning. As she concentrated, she felt the hum begin again, vibrating through the air and into her very bones. The symbols flickered, and Clara squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself for another onslaught of visions. Images flooded her mind once more. Alien worlds filled with strange, towering structures, vast oceans under a purple sky, and creatures unlike anything she had ever imagined. But among the beauty, there was an undercurrent of fear, a sense of something watching, something waiting. "Clara!" The whisper was soft yet insistent, echoing in her mind. It was a voice, one that seemed both familiar and foreign. She opened her eyes, breathless, searching the room for the source. "Clara!" the voice called again, clearer now, almost pleading. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The lights flickered once more, and for a moment she thought she saw a figure forming in the shadows, a silhouette that seemed to shift and writhe, indistinct, yet somehow human. Panic surged through her, and she took a step back, her flashlight beam quivering as it swept across the room. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, and Clara gasped, stumbling back against the wall. But instead of a terrifying encounter, the presence halted, its form stabilizing into that of a woman, ethereal and translucent, with features that were both haunting and beautiful. "Help me," the apparition whispered, its voice a mere breath against the frigid air. Clara's heart raced, torn between terror and empathy. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I am trapped," the figure replied, its expression filled with anguish. "I was a guardian of knowledge, of life, and now I am lost." "Lost? What do you mean?" Clara felt drawn to the figure, despite the chill that swept through her. "There is power in what you have found," the spirit continued, its eyes filled with a deep, penetrating sadness. "But that power has a cost. You must choose wisely, Clara." "What choice?" Clara pressed, desperate for answers. The apparition's form flickered, the air around it shimmering as if the very fabric of reality was thinning. "The artifact calls to you. It has a purpose beyond your understanding, but it can also destroy and consume." As the words hung heavy in the air, Clara felt the cold seep deeper into her bones, the weight of the spirit's warning pressing down on her. "How can I help you?" she asked, determination mingling with fear. "Release me," the figure pleaded, "and the truth shall be revealed. But be wary of those who would use this knowledge for darkness." Before Clara could respond, the spirit began to fade, its form dissolving into the shadows. Remember, Clara, every choice has consequences. The room fell silent, leaving Clara trembling in the aftermath of the encounter. She struggled to process what had just happened. Had it been a hallucination? A figment of her imagination brought on by exhaustion? Or was it something more profound? A warning of the danger that lurked within the artifact? As she backed away, Clara's mind raced with possibilities. The answers were tantalizingly close, yet the implications were terrifying. She had to tell Harris about the encounter, but she knew he would be skeptical. They had to investigate further, together. The next day, Clara sought out Harris, her mind racing with urgency. She found him in the laboratory, surrounded by instruments and data sheets, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Dr. Harris, we need to talk," Clara said, her voice steady, despite the chaos swirling inside her. He looked up, concern etched on his face. "What is it?" "I saw something last night," she began, hesitating for a moment. "A spirit. A woman. She said the artifact has a purpose, but also a danger. We need to study it, but we must be cautious." Harris's expression hardened, skepticism flickering across his features. "A spirit? Clara, you're a scientist. You can't let your imagination run wild." "No, listen. She warned me about the cost of the knowledge we're seeking. We need to understand what we're dealing with before it's too late." He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "All right, let's say for a moment that you're right. What do you propose we do?" Clara's heart raced as she laid out a plan. "We need to run tests on the artifact, gather data on its composition, and see if we can activate it further. We can do it safely, if we're careful." Harris considered her words, the tension in the air palpable. Finally he nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Fine, but we proceed with extreme caution. I don't want anyone else knowing about this." They gathered equipment and set up a temporary lab in the basement, the atmosphere charged with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Clara's hands trembled as she worked, her scientific training battling against the fear of what they might uncover. As they prepared their instruments, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air felt thick, and every time she glanced at the artifact, she sensed a presence lurking just beyond the edge of her perception. Hours passed as they analyzed samples, the flickering lights casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Clara felt the pull of the artifact, its hum resonating with her thoughts. She couldn't help but feel that it was waiting for them to take the next step. "Let's try activating it," Clara suggested, a voice barely above a whisper. Harris hesitated, his brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure that's wise? What if something goes wrong?" "We have to know," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling beneath the surface. "We need to understand its purpose." Reluctantly, Harris nodded, and they began the process of activating the artifact. They set up an array of sensors and instruments around it, monitoring for any changes. Clara's heart raced as she reached for the controls, her fingers hovering over the activation switch. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. The artifact pulsed with energy, the symbols glowing brighter as if awakened from a long slumber. A low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through their bodies as the room trembled with power. Clara felt a rush of energy surge through her, her mind racing with possibilities. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the ground shook beneath them. Clara and Harris exchanged terrified glances as the artifact began to vibrate uncontrollably. Shut it down, Harris shouted, scrambling for the controls. But before Clara could respond, the artifact emitted a blinding flash of light, engulfing the room in an otherworldly glow. The sensation was overwhelming, a wave of energy washing over them, and for a moment, Clara felt suspended in time. Visions flooded her mind again. Dark, vast landscapes, swirling storms, and flashes of creatures moving in the shadows. She gasped, trying to grasp the images as they slipped away. But among the chaos, one thing became clear. They were not alone. "Clara!" Harris's voice broke through the haze, pulling her back to reality. She blinked rapidly, disoriented. The light began to fade, leaving them in darkness, the artifact once again silent. The air crackled with tension, and Clara's breath quickened as she looked at Harris. "Did you see that?" she gasped. "What was that?" Harris shook his head, his expression a mix of awe and fear. "I don't know, but we need to document this." As they began to collect their thoughts and data, Clara felt the weight of their discovery pressing down on her. They had awakened something that should have remained dormant. What other secrets did the artifact hold? What had they unleashed? The room fell into an uneasy silence, the weight of the unknown hanging heavily in the air. As they sifted through their notes, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of uncovering something monumental, or something catastrophic. Unbeknownst to them, the artifact was not just a relic of the past, it was a harbinger of something far more sinister. The following days passed in a blur of research and unease. Clara and Harris were consumed by their work, poring over the data collected from the artifact, but each new revelation only deepened their dread. The more they learned, the less they understood the true nature of what they had found. Clara kept replaying the visions in her mind, the swirling darkness, the creatures lurking just out of sight. There was an urgency, a whisper that felt both enticing and terrifying. She knew they had to tread carefully, yet the pull of the artifact was intoxicating. One evening, as Clara sat alone in the lab, she felt a shiver run down her spine. The lights flickered again, casting long shadows that stretched unnaturally across the room. The air grew thick, heavy with an unnameable tension, and she could hear a faint whisper echoing in her mind. "Clara, help us." The voice was hauntingly familiar, sending chills racing through her body. She glanced around the room, her heart racing. Was it the spirit she had seen before, or something more sinister? "Clara," the voice persisted, drawing her in with an urgency that felt overwhelming. "We need you." Before she could gather her thoughts, Harris entered the lab, breaking the spell. "You all right?" he asked, concern etched across his face. I think I heard something," Clara replied, her voice shaky. It felt like a warning. Harris furrowed his brow. "We're treading on dangerous ground. We need to stop this before it goes too far." "I can't just walk away," Clara insisted, her determination surging. "We're so close to understanding its purpose." "I know, but at what cost?" Harris countered, his voice strained. "We're playing with forces we don't comprehend. This could destroy us." The tension between them simmered as Clara weighed his words. Deep down she understood the risk, yet the thrill of discovery was a powerful lure. They had come this far. How could she turn back now? "Let's gather more data. We need to know what we're dealing with," Clara finally said, her voice firm. Harris hesitated, his brow furrowed in concern. "Fine, but we do this carefully. No more experiments until we have a clear understanding." They spent the next few days meticulously documenting their findings, analysing every detail of the artifact and the strange occurrences surrounding it. Clara felt the pressure building, a sense of foreboding that something was about to happen. One night, as Clara reviewed their notes, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The whispers grew louder, echoing in her mind as she tried to focus. "Clara, the choice." The following day, she approached Harris with a sense of urgency. "We need to go deeper. I can feel it. There's something beneath the surface we're not seeing." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What do you suggest?" We need to conduct a ground-penetrating radar survey. It could reveal what's hidden beneath the ice, close to the artifact. It's our best shot at understanding its origins." After a tense deliberation, Harris reluctantly agreed. They gathered the necessary equipment and prepared to head out to the location where the artifact had been discovered. Clara felt a thrill of excitement mixed with anxiety. They were finally going to uncover the secrets hidden beneath the ice. As they trekked across the frozen landscape, the biting cold stung their faces, and the winds howled like restless spirits. Clara led the way, her mind racing with possibilities. What lay beneath the ice? Could it be more artifacts, remnants of an ancient civilization, or something far more dangerous? When they reached the designated area, Clara set up the radar equipment, her hands trembling with anticipation. She glanced at Harris, who was busy calibrating the instruments, his expression tense. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the howling wind. "Ready as I'll ever be," he replied, his eyes scanning the horizon, as if expecting something to emerge from the depths. With a deep breath, Clara activated the radar, the equipment humming to life as waves of energy pulsed into the ground. She watched the screen intently, her heart pounding in her chest. The echoes bounced back, revealing layers of ice and snow. But then, something unexpected. "Wait, what is that?" Clara exclaimed, pointing to a cluster of anomalies that appeared on the screen. Harris leaned closer, his brow furrowing. "It looks like structures, multiple layers beneath the surface." Excitement surged through Clara. "Structures? How deep?" "Approximately 30 meters, Harris replied, disbelief coloring his voice. "This could be incredible." They worked quickly, mapping out the coordinates, before heading back to the station. Clara's mind raced with the implications of their discovery. If there were structures buried beneath the ice, it could change everything they knew about the region. But with that knowledge came a sense of foreboding. The whispers had intensified, echoing in her mind like a haunting melody. "You must choose, Clara. Choose wisely." That night, as Clara lay in her bunk, she wrestled with her thoughts. Was it worth the risk? The artifact had already revealed its danger, and now there were hints of more lurking beneath the ice. She felt a deep-rooted fear that they were crossing a line that should not be crossed. But the lure of discovery was powerful, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The following day, Clara and Harris prepared for their descent into the icy depths. They had secured the necessary equipment to drill down to the structures revealed by the radar. Clara's excitement was palpable, but so was her anxiety. The warnings echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As they trekked back to the drilling site, Clara's mind raced with questions. What would they find? Who or what had created these structures? As they arrived at the site, Clara took a moment to breathe in the harsh, frigid air, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The drilling equipment stood ready, a massive machine capable of cutting through the thick layers of ice. Clara felt the weight of anticipation and dread settling in her stomach as they prepared to lower the drill. "Let's do this," Harris said, his voice firm despite the tension in the air. As the drill began to bore into the ice, a low rumble resonated through the ground. Clara felt the vibrations surge beneath her feet, each thud echoing in her chest. The sound was almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat pulsing through the earth. "Keep an eye on the readings," Clara instructed, her focus sharpened. They monitored the drill's progress, the depth indicators ticking down steadily, but as they reached 20 meters, something unexpected happened. The drill hit a hard surface, jolting violently and sending shudders through the machine. "What was that?" Clara exclaimed, alarmed. Harris quickly checked the instruments. "It's like we hit something solid, but it shouldn't be there." "Can you see anything?" Clara asked, her pulse racing. He shook his head, adjusting the equipment to get a clearer reading. We need to keep going. Whatever it is, it could be significant. With a shared glance of determination, they pushed the drill deeper. The machine groaned under the strain, the vibrations intensifying as they broke through the surface. Clara held her breath, a mix of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. Finally, with a loud clatter, the drill broke through, sending up a cloud of ice and debris. Clara squinted against the spray, her heart racing as they revealed a large, smooth surface beneath the ice, a surface that was unmistakably artificial. "Look!" Clara shouted, pointing at the shimmering material. Harris's eyes widened as they both stepped closer. The surface was covered in the same strange symbols that adorned the artifact. It seemed to hum with energy, a faint glow pulsing beneath the layers of ice. "What is this?" Harris whispered, awe creeping into his voice. "I don't know, but we have to document everything," Clara said, her mind racing with possibilities. They set to work, taking samples and photographs, but as they delved deeper into their investigation, Clara felt the atmosphere shift. The air around them felt charged, heavy with a palpable tension. It was as if the very environment was reacting to their presence. Suddenly, a low, resonant sound echoed from the depths below, a deep vibration that seemed to resonate within their bones. Clara exchanged a worried glance with Harris. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," he replied, his eyes darting around as if expecting something to emerge from the ice. "But it doesn't feel right." The humming grew louder, vibrating through the air and resonating within Clara's chest. It was almost melodic, a haunting song that filled her with an inexplicable sense of longing. "Clara!" The whisper echoed in her mind again, clearer this time. "Help us!" Clara staggered back, clutching her head. "I can hear it. I can hear them." "What?" Harris asked, alarmed. "They're calling to me!" Clara shouted, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. "I can feel them. They want something." "Clara, we need to get out of here," Harris urged, grabbing her arm. "This isn't safe." "No, I can't leave now," Clara protested, the urge to uncover the truth battling against her instincts. "We're so close." But as she spoke, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. The deep vibration intensified, and cracks formed in the ice, spiderwebbing out from the drill site. Clara's heart raced as she felt the temperature drop suddenly, an unnatural chill creeping in. "Get back!" Harris shouted, pulling her away from the cracking surface. Before they could react, the ice split open, revealing a yawning chasm below. Clara stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. The darkness seemed to pulse, a void that beckoned them closer. "Clara, we have to go!" Harris yelled, panic creeping into his voice. As Clara backed away, she felt the pull of the darkness, an inexplicable desire to know what lay beneath. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices urging her forward. "Clara, help us!" With one last glance at the chasm, Clara turned and fled alongside Harris, adrenaline surging through her veins. They raced back towards the surface, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Once outside, Clara collapsed against the snow, gasping for breath as the adrenaline coursed through her. Harris stood beside her, scanning the horizon, his expression filled with concern. "What the hell just happened?" he exclaimed, his voice strained. "I don't know," Clara panted, trying to catch her breath. "But they were calling to me. I felt connected to something down there." Harris shook his head, disbelief mingling with fear. "This is getting out of hand. We need to report this to the authorities. This is bigger than us." "No," Clara protested, panic rising within her. "We can't tell anyone about this. If they find out about the artifact or what we've discovered, we don't know what they might do." "Clara, we need help," Harris insisted, his tone firm. "What we've uncovered is dangerous. We're in over our heads." She stared into his eyes, feeling the weight of the choice before her. She understood the risk, the danger that lurked in the depths, but the allure of discovery tugged at her, refusing to let go. "We can't turn back now," Clara finally said, her voice steady. "We need to go back to the artifact and figure this out. If we leave it here, who knows what could happen?" Harris hesitated, weighing her words. Finally, he sighed, relenting. "All right, but we're proceeding with caution. No more experiments until we understand what we're dealing with." As they returned to the research station, Clara felt a mixture of excitement and dread. They were at a crossroads, and every decision from this point forward would shape their fate. Once back in the lab, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The whispers had quieted, but an underlying tension lingered in the air. She approached the artifact, its symbols faintly glowing, pulsing with an energy that felt almost alive. "Can you feel that?" she asked Harris, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his expression grave. "It's as if it's responding to us." With a deep breath, Clara reached out, her fingers brushing against the surface. The hum began again, a low vibration that resonated through her bones. She felt the connection intensify, the echoes of the voices swirling around her. "Clara, help us!" The whisper enveloped her, pulling her deeper into its grasp. "Harris, I think we need to activate it again," Clara said, her heart racing. "We need to understand what it wants." "What if it leads to more chaos?" he replied, concern etched on his face. "Or it could lead us to the answers we seek," Clara countered, determination surging within her. After a moment of hesitation, Harris relented, and they began preparing the equipment once more. As Clara activated the artifact, the energy surged around them, enveloping them in a warm glow. Visions flooded Clara's mind again, an alien world filled with strange landscapes and distant stars, the echoes of lost souls calling out for help. She felt their pain, their anguish, a desperate plea for salvation. "Clara, we're here, trapped." The voice became clearer, more urgent. "You must help us. The darkness. It consumes us." As the visions intensified, Clara felt a surge of fear. "What darkness? What do you mean?" "The artifact. It holds the key," the voice replied, a mix of hope and despair. "But it can also bring destruction. You must choose, Clara. Save us or join us." The weight of their words pressed down on her, filling her with an overwhelming sense of dread. She couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out. "Harris, we need to focus," Clara shouted, fighting against the tide of chaos that threatened to consume her. "We have to find a way to help them." As the visions reached a crescendo, the room shook violently, and the artifact pulsed with energy. Clara and Harris held on, the overwhelming force threatening to tear them apart. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging them into darkness. The air crackled with electricity, and Clara could hear the whispers growing louder, more frenzied. "Clara, we're losing control," Harris shouted, panic rising in his voice. In a moment of clarity, Clara understood the choice laid before her. "We have to seal it. If we don't, it could destroy everything." With urgency, they scrambled to the controls, their fingers flying over the buttons. They needed to contain the artifact's power before it was too late. "Now!" Clara shouted, and they pressed the final sequence together. The artifact erupted in a blinding flash of light, and Clara felt herself being pulled away, a surge of energy enveloping her. The world around her dissolved into chaos, the voices echoing in her mind. "Help us, save us." And then silence. Clara awoke to find herself lying on the cold lab floor, disoriented and shaken. The lights flickered back on, casting a dim glow over the room. She blinked, trying to gather her thoughts, and slowly pushed herself up. "Harris?" she called out, her voice hoarse. She looked around, panic rising within her as she realized he was nowhere to be found. The lab was eerily quiet, the weight of their recent actions pressing heavily on her. She stumbled to her feet, feeling the tremors still coursing through the ground. The artifact sat in the center of the room, now dormant, its symbols dimmed to a faint glow. "What happened?" Clara whispered to herself, the memory of the chaos flooding back. With shaky legs, she approached the artifact, her heart racing. As she reached out, she felt a connection, a faint echo of the energy that had surged through them moments before. But something was different. The whispers were gone, replaced by a profound silence that settled around her. The room felt empty, hollow, as if the essence of the artifact had vanished. Clara knelt beside the artifact, searching for answers. Had they succeeded in sealing it? Had they truly saved those trapped within? Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Clara turned to see Harris lying sprawled against the wall, unconscious but alive. Relief washed over her, and she rushed to his side. "Harris," she exclaimed, shaking him gently. "Wake up." He stirred, groaning as he blinked to open his eyes. "Clara, what happened?" "I don't know," she replied, her voice trembling. "We activated the artifact and then everything went wrong." Harris pushed himself up, looking around in confusion. Where did the energy go? The voices? "I think we sealed it," Clara said, her heart pounding. "But at what cost?" They exchanged a worried glance, both understanding that their encounter with the artifact had left a mark on them, one they might never fully comprehend. As they gathered their things, Clara felt the weight of their choices pressing down on her. They had uncovered ancient knowledge, but it had come with a price. The world around them felt changed, the air thick with unspoken consequences. "Do you think we really helped them?" Clara asked quietly, her heart heavy. "I don't know," Harris admitted, his voice solemn. "But we have to be cautious. Whatever we discovered could have repercussions far beyond our understanding." Together, they packed up their equipment, their minds racing with the implications of their journey. Clara felt a deep sense of loss, an understanding that they had touched something profound and dangerous, but now it lay beyond their reach. As they stepped outside into the harsh Arctic sun, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The icy landscape stretched out before them, vast and desolate, yet it felt imbued with a sense of power, an ancient presence lurking just beneath the surface. "Where do we go from here?" Harris asked, glancing back at the lab. "We document everything," Clara replied, determination rising within her. "We have to warn others. We can't let anyone else make the same mistakes we did." As they trudged through the snow, Clara felt a mix of hope and dread. They had survived, but the knowledge they had uncovered was a double-edged sword. The darkness they had glimpsed could rise again, and she knew they would have to face it eventually. The echoes of the past lingered in her mind, a reminder of the choices they had made. And though the whispers had faded, Clara could feel the weight of their burden, one that would follow her long after they left the frozen wasteland behind.